All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, who is in New Mexico via Central California. It's Drew's favorite day of the year, at least in the top 25 or so. The US Open draw has dropped, and that's what we're going to talk about all today, men's and women's side. Talk about the outright markets, the quarter markets, which are perhaps more compelling on the men's side, certainly, and also early upset watch. So let's start with the women's side, Drew. Anything that jumps out immediately in terms of players who could be in trouble early?
Well, players who I had really high hopes for, particularly who bear the U.S. flag, got kind of jobbed here. The First of all, U.S. Open draw. Every one of the Slam draws is an awesome experience, but for whatever reason, the U.S. Open decides not to give it any fanfare. Like the Wimbledon draw has fanfare, the French Open draw has fanfare. Like I don't love just the we did it all behind closed doors. Boom, here they are. Like they give it some pomp and some circumstance. This only happens once a year. The U.S. Open is a big deal, and definitely don't hose the U.S. women like this. Coco Gauff coming in with the best form of any women's tennis player, having defeated Iga, slaying the dragon in Cincinnati, and then going on to win her first Masters 1000. And she gets put in as the second seeded player in Iga's quarter. And so you think, okay, well, I was looking forward to a potential Coco Iga final. I guess we're going to see that in the quarterfinals. And then you break down the rest of Coco's section of the draw, and it is gnarly. She is going to have some very, very tough tests between even just as early as round 2, where she has to take on Mira Andreeva. And then, she did dispatch Andreeva in at the French Open, but Andreeva has played a lot less tennis than her in the run up to this event. And so, even though I was very pro Coco as recently as 24 hours ago, I have her on upset alert early here because Andreeva is going to be a very, very tough ask. And then assuming you get through that, you get Danielle Collins or Elise Mertens in round 3, and then on to Petra Kvitova in round 4 before facing Iga in the quarterfinals. And presumably if you've gotten to that point, if you're Coco Gauff and you're not completely out of gas just yet, you still have tough tests in the semifinals and finals. And so while I was hoping this was going to be the breakout tournament for Coco at the Slam level, I think we're probably going to have to put a pin in that and look at the 2024 calendar for an opportunity there, because this is a big cold water on any enthusiasm I had for Coco. So that was the first obvious takeaway. The other American who came up with the Masters 1000 title in Canada this year, and Jessica Pegula, also got a nasty draw. Her third quarter is full of very, very, very high ceiling women. She has to potentially go up against Svitolina in round 3. She's potentially got Ludmila Samsonova, your Russian outsider at 70-1, round 4, and then Vondrousova, who just of course is coming off of a Wimbledon championship in the quarterfinals, and so Pegula also with a really, really, really difficult path to make it deep into this tournament. And I think this is really going to dash some of the hopes of some of these U.S. players. Q4 for the women is, don't overthink it. Sabalenka looks like the easy choice there. She is far superior to all of these players, and her potential round 4 and quarterfinal tests do not spook me whatsoever. So here we are. She's going to be in the semifinals again. I completely buy into Sabalenka potentially having some sort of mental issues with the advancing through the semifinal round, despite her one ability to do that, defeating Magda Linette at the Australian Open. And so I think, you want an outsider, you're looking for a long shot to win this particular tournament, you got to shop in Q3 because whoever comes through there could definitely get the better of Sabalenka and punch their ticket to the final, and might be facing either a gassed Iga or maybe an overrated Iga or a gassed Coco at that point. So Q2, we haven't mentioned, looks like a complete long shot is very, very possible there. Rybakina, who is your top seed in that section, is not trustworthy right now considering her physical condition. Again, the U.S. Open draw did her dirty not with her draw particularly, but with the photo they chose for her when they pushed it out with check out Rybakina's section of the draw. They must have found the worst, most sickly looking photo of any of the run-up events that she was taken, and they pushed that one. So I don't really understand it, but she can't be trusted. I don't think Maria Sakkari can be trusted at all to even make it to week 2, let alone win this quarter. So if you're looking for a long shot to win a quarter, shop in Q2, and then overall, this really does look like it's going to be tough for any of these women to take out Iga, because Iga is almost certainly going to punch her ticket to week 2. No real tough test for her whatsoever in week 1. She's basically got to bye to the quarterfinals, at which point she draws potentially a beleaguered Coco Gauff. She draws a long shot in the semis out of Q2, and then potentially whoever defeats Aryna Sabalenka in the finals. So if I had to make a bet to win this moment, I'm shooting for Iga. And if I'm shopping around for value, I'm looking for a Q3 winner to potentially make the final, and I'm looking for a bigger price to come through in Q2.
You don't think one of potentially Ostapenko or Kudermetova could give Iga maybe a bit of a game early on before you get to the quarterfinals? And then, it's not great having to potentially draw Coco Gauff, even though, I mean, she's probably a dog to even make the quarterfinal just with that draw, having to go through Andreeva as well as probably the Collins or Mertens, and then Kvitova as well.
Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, she has to be greater than even money to get to the quarterfinals. That makes it easier for Iga. But, Kudermetova's on the list of players who are similar to Samsonova, though Samsonova's usually twice her price, where I always think that just because of how hard she hits the ball and her upside, how she can just play people off the court, that she does have the upside in her to one day win a Grand Slam. You don't think that she can give kind of shaky Iga a little bit of a run?
So I was high on Kvitova. High on Kudermetova to win her quarter at Wimbledon, because she was an awesome price and she was in incredible form, and she no-showed impressively. And since then, if you look at her performance and on the timeline, something's going on. I don't know what happened. Injury, just in general, she's out of gas. She needs a break. I can't put my finger on it, but if Kudermetova even makes it to that spot, I will be impressed. Similarly for Ostapenko, I think you're going to have kind of a first 4 matches here in the U.S. Open for Iga, where she's going to be a minus 1,200-ish favorite.
Yep. Okay, well, that's fair. All right, no go on Kudermetova. Noted. Let's jump to the men's side. Some early takeaways there in terms of potential round 4 matchups, looking at some semi-blockbusters. Tsitsipas v Fritz, Tiafoe against Casper Ruud looms, 2 of the final 4 last year, and then Andy Murray and Zverev is a potential round 2 matchup in Q1. That looks like the best of the matchups in the first couple of rounds. What do you make of the men's side in terms of early stuff?
Yeah, well, we've been talking about this for a little while, but it's a 2-horse race, and the handicap now is pretty clear. Alcaraz has to go to hell and back to get to the finals, and Djokovic gets a free pass. This draw is so bizarrely lopsided. I almost feel like there was tomfoolery at play. Like they're trying to level the field here and really test Alcaraz, because if Alcaraz wins this title, this will be even more impressive than winning Wimbledon, in my opinion. And it's because of who he's going to have to go through to get there. Dan Evans is not an easy test in round 3. Cam Norrie is not an easy test in round 4. Not that either of those guys could realistically beat him, but they're going to draw him out. They're going to push those matches to 4 or 5 hours potentially, because that's just their style of play, particularly Cam Norrie. And so he's going to take some damage in week 1 getting to the quarterfinals, at which point he draws the better of Zverev and Sinner. Sinner, we know, can give him a test. That's a relatively even matchup, as even as it can be with Alcaraz on the court. And Zverev is one of the few players who I think is in form to the degree that you could have considered him as an outsider price if you wanted a third choice for this. And he's got absolutely the worst draw of them all, having to go through Sinner and then Alcaraz and then Medvedev before drawing Djokovic. So if you fancy a bet on an outsider in Zverev, I would just roll over those money lines. You're going to get something in the 25 to 50 to 1 range, because he's going to be a pretty decent dog to both Sinner and Alcaraz, maybe even Medvedev. So and definitely to Djokovic. So if Zverev pulls it off, it'll be a small miracle. And while I do still believe we are going to get Alcaraz Djokovic in the final, the tables have been absolutely stacked in favor of Djokovic here, because he can come through with absolutely minimal time on court, no damage in the heat and humidity of Flushing Meadows, and Alcaraz, on the other hand, is going to be pushed to his absolute limit just to get there.
Yeah, and Carlito has to go through your man as well, Cam Norrie, potentially. It's like the fourth round. Pretty relatively easy sailing for Carlos until that point, I would have thought. Not too worried about Daniel Evans, but Cam Norrie's not the easiest fourth round opponent. Cam Norrie's beaten him a couple of times, including in Rio, though some weird stuff potentially going on with Carlos's body that day. But yeah, about as brutal as a run as you could draw up for Carlos until the final. Okay, before we jump into some quarter prices, reminder, with the NFL season quickly approaching, now is the perfect time to get your Roto World Fantasy Football Draft Guide, Drew. Get ready for your draft and stay one step ahead of your league during the preseason with updated player rankings, profiles, projections, mock drafts, and more. Go to nbcsports.com/draft guide and use code DRAFT2023 to save 20% at checkout. All right, quarter futures. Stay with the men for the moment. Q1, which is a bloodbath. Carlos Alcaraz is -190, Yannick Sinner +333, Alexander Zverev 9-1, and then you get into Murray, Dimitrov, Norrie in the 30-1 range. I don't think there's really a play at those prices because Zverev is the one who leaps out, but you're better off just parlaying the price against Sinner into the price against Alcaraz, I'd imagine.
100% agree. And I actually think I might do that. Yeah. If I got to watch particularly the Dan Evans and the Cam Norrie matches from Alcaraz, because if he's wearing any of the fatigue from that run in Cincinnati, people are going to kind of look at the actual final, look at, he was a huge live favorite in that final, and they're going to be like, well, yeah, I mean, he did great. He's in form. He's tuned up to the conditions. Well, he spent a lot of time on court. And I think realistically, if he doesn't come through rounds 1, 2, 3 in matches that are under 3 hours, then I'm going to start to worry that he's going to run out of gas when he gets to that quarterfinal stage, and that a player like Zverev can get the better of him. We are, I believe, 2 years removed from a very, very, very close call for Zverev. He played Djokovic to effectively a draw in the semifinals of the U.S. Open here, which was his absolute peak in terms of ELO rating, his absolute peak in terms of, he was coming into the best of his talents. He gets derailed the next French Open with the badly sprained ankle. And it's taken him until this French Open to show any sign of life. And he is now kind of, at least to my eyes, rounding into a player that I think can beat the top level players on tour. So he may capture a little bit of magic like he did a couple of years ago, and ultimately punch his ticket to a semifinal here, which would presumably be against Medvedev, and that would be a fun match. But ultimately, I think this is a decision we're going to have to make 1 week from today, after we see how much time Alcaraz is on court.
Yep. Well, we can skip Q4, which has Novak Djokovic at -500 and no interest there. Q2, which features Daniil Medvedev, who just mentioned as the favorite at +125, which seems a little bit short. And then Hubie Hurkacz +600, Rublev +650. And then Matteo Berrettini 14-1, who beat Zverev at Wimbledon. Now, the Matteo price is the one that leaped out to me. I know overall he hasn't been in good form at all, this really since his run in the US Open last year. But he did look very good at Wimbledon until he came up against Carlos Alcaraz and got a set, the first set off of Alcaraz. His lead-up form has been not great. He lost in straight sets to Sinner in Canada and then lost in 3 to Felix at Cincinnati. I guess those aren't despicable losses, going down to a couple of good players. But any interest in Matteo Berrettini at 14-1 to take his quarter?
Well, Q2 is pretty soft. I mean, actually, like the disparity between the overall strength in Q1 and Q2 is noticeably significant. Berrettini was a quarterfinalist last year, losing to Casper Ruud in a match that he had no business losing. And I think realistically, he has not logged so much time on the tennis court this year that I would worry at all that he's gonna at any point run out of gas, right? So the tank is full. The Berrettini tank is full. The question is, what does the form look like? Because he just again hasn't played much tennis. I will say that drawing Ugo Humbert in round 1 is tremendous. Drawing the winner of Rinderknecht Schwartzman in round 2 is tremendous. So he gets 2 nice matches to kind of warm into this tournament. Rublev doesn't spook me whatsoever. Rublev has the boogeyman in his own quarter, in that the Medvedev Rublev relationship is like big brother, little brother in almost every way you can imagine. So I kind of feel like Rublev is an easy player to not get too overly invested in. And actually, honestly, he could lose in round 1 to Rusevori, who can produce pretty spectacular tennis at times. So yeah, I mean, the path could absolutely open up for Berrettini to get to the quarterfinals here, and I think you got to do a little bit of the mental calculus of what would the price be in a Medvedev-Berrettini matchup, because Medvedev, to me, even though this calendar year hasn't been tremendous for him, he's had very, very sparse moments where he looked like he was, still a top player on tour, but they've been few and far between. That said, he is significantly better than all of the players in that section. Alex de Minaur doesn't spook me. Nicholas Jarry doesn't spook me. Borna Coric certainly is not in the form that you would be concerned about. So the ranked players in this portion are really nothing to write home about. We got a Kei Nishikori sighting, which is kind of insane. Haven't seen him in a draw in forever. There's a Milos Raonic sighting in this draw too, against Tsitsipas in I think round 1. But it's to me at least, this is Medvedev's quarter 2 lose, and if you wanted a long shot price, I think you found it in Berrettini, because the surface does suit him relatively well, and if he finds even 80% of what he did in his run to the quarterfinals last year, then I think he can return this year.
Yeah, I would compare Daniil Medvedev right now to the final year of the Gobert Mitchell Utah Jazz, where he's in the mix, he's very solid, very respectable, and then just seems like he just doesn't have the ceiling to ultimately beat a team with Stephen Curry or Giannis or Jokic, or in this case, Alcaraz or Djokovic. He's very much there to lose in a semi-final in 4 sets, it feels like. Though, who knows? He's won this tournament before. Let's go close out the men's side with Q3, which is certainly the most wide open in terms of the odds. Holger Rune is the favorite at plus 450. Last year's finalist, Casper Ruud, plus 550. Last year's semi-finalist, almost finalist, Francis Tiafoe, plus 550. And then you got the likes of Tommy Paul, Sebi Korda, your man, Davidovich Fokina, and then JJ Wolf and Ben Shelton. Who do you like in this relatively wide open corner?
I think you characterized it correctly. This is wide open. We probably said that about Ruud's quarter at the French Open. You think he was in the 3rd quarter, and we were like, oh, wow, Ruud. I mean, you can cross him off. He's not going back to the final, and he went back to the final. I would say that right now much more sincerely, because if Ruud does even come through this 3rd quarter, I give him somewhere in the ballpark of a 2% chance against Djokovic. So I think, this is a look to try to bet against the guys at the top, including a guy that I have affinity for in the future in Holger Rune. Rune is out of gas, from what I can tell you. He is definitely the time spent on court in his very successful clay court stretch, backed up with a pretty impressive deep run at Wimbledon. I think that's enough to kind of kind of qualify him as, he's arrived, and he now seems like he needs a break pretty badly. So if he makes a run here, it's going to be a surprise. I have some dead Rune outright tickets in my accounts that I've already created. I'm ready. They've got in L's in pencil next to them because I will be very surprised if he ultimately can get to a semifinal here. But what's kind of wild in saying that I've lost faith in Rune, he's also the only player in the bottom half of the draw that I think can give Djokovic a match. Period. I don't think anyone else can realistically take more than a set and maybe I'll break off of Djokovic. Whereas Rune, he found some magic in Paris last year. It kind of came out of nowhere, which would be similar to if it came out of nowhere at the U.S. Open, by the way. But he came out of nowhere and he did beat Djokovic specifically in that when Djokovic was in amazing form. So we know that he has kind of he's got the mental, he's got the he's banked some positive vibes against Djokovic, which definitely matters just because he's the all-time great. And so I that's the bull case for Rune, but it will again be a surprise. His draw is soft until he runs into the winner of Tommy Paul Davidovich Fokina. Great, that's going to be a great match. That's going to be super fun. Every Davidovich Fokina match is must watch just because it's super entertaining. Tommy Paul, a lot of people in the tennis community who run numbers are kind of in the same like disbelief, like hardcore swing. Tommy Paul is clearly a top 10 player somehow, but realistically, I don't know that I believe him to be a guy that can win a quarter at a slam yet. And then Francis Tiafoe, who did do it last year, he's set up pretty well. So in the same spirit that the U.S. Open did their women dirty, they have put 3 up-and-coming U.S. men's players, Tommy Paul, Francis Tiafoe, and Sepp Korda, in a section of the draw that they can win. So I think if there's a U.S. representative, if there's someone who captures the the momentum of the U.S. crowd and really turns it into something special, I would circle those 3 U.S. players. And I mean, I missed out on all of the Francis Tiafoe love last year. I don't think I bet him in a single one of like the high profile matches he won. And that was a total surprise. And even watching the Netflix documentary that recapped it all, I'm still not sure how he did that. So it's a mystery to me that if he's actually capable of reproducing that level of tennis. But he is under some pressure because he's going to drop a ton of points if he doesn't go deep in this tournament. So kind of an interesting, little X factor there, I suppose. Maybe a little extra motivational bump for him. He's going to get some nice time slots, right? They're going to put Francis Tiafoe in the night courts, center courts, grandstand, Louis Armstrong, right? He's going to get preferential treatment because of how special his run was last year. So I would consider it, but I haven't seen enough good from him to have sincere belief that he can do it again.
Yeah. One of my biggest bets of all of last year was Alcaraz in the semi-final, like minus 180 against Tiafoe. I thought it should have been minus 500, and I had to sweat that out to the bitter end of the 5th set, and I still don't know why I needed to sweat that out. Tiafoe just managed to win key points and had an amazing run. Let's race through the women's quarters. We largely covered these already. Q1, Eagers plus 100, Goff plus 300, Danielle Collins plus 1400. I think with all of these prices, you're better off just backing money lines and just rolling them over. And just looking at these prices now across the 4 quarters, they are a reminder that like 90% of the time or more even, you're better off just rolling over money lines than taking these prices, though there are always a few diamonds in the rough. In Q2, which I think is a little bit more interesting just because it's so anchored by Elena Rybakina at plus 190, who is very vulnerable. Karolina Mukova's plus 450. Zachary, who I don't want any part of, 8-1. Bencic would be more interested in at 10-1 if she didn't have such a relatively tough draw. What do you think of Beatrice Haddad-Maia at 11-1, who always seems to overperform?
Yeah, she always overperforms, and she's got a never say die attitude, and she's she's a player who is super unique on the women's tour in that if she loses a first set, you almost start to have a little more confidence that she can win because she likes to come from behind. She likes to do a long, grueling 3-round knockout, drag out fight. And there's not a lot of other women that can match her physically in those stakes. So Haddad Maya at 11-1 would be a good bet here, I think. But I need to see where the qualifiers land here and kind of really give some of the true wild outsiders a chance, because the top of the board, Rybakina, again, is basically put a line through her for me, just considering her physical state. Sakkari's put a line through. Bencic, I'm putting a line through reluctantly. Stevens, Azarenka, Kostia, Kalina, none of those women I think have the quality to get through 5 rounds. So this is one where Mukova, Haddad Maya could meet in a quarterfinal. I believe they're on opposite sections, or we could see somebody truly outrageous make a run Raducanu style. And so I think I'm gonna see where the qualifiers land and see if anyone is riding especially hot. Maybe this is the quarter to make that play.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, the third quarter is pretty open as well. Jess Pegula is plus 175 in the favorite. Wimbledon champion, which still seems strange to say, but Wimbledon champion Marketa Vondrousova is plus 400, second favorite. My ticket is on Ludmila Samsonova, though she's plus 700 to win the quarter. I think 70-1 to win it all at that point is probably a better price. Yeah, I'd say that's a better price. Svitolina 10-1. Caroline Garcia, who it's really fallen apart for. She follows. And then you're talking about Leila Fernandez, Potapova, and Andreescu. Does anyone jump out of that crew? Madison Keys as well at 11-1.
Yeah, I think this comes down to Vondrousova versus Samsonova, unless Samsonova is carrying an injury that we don't know about, which is possible. I had some belief in Pegula, but boy, do I not love the way that they've stacked this deck against her. And so ultimately, I think a player like Vondrousova, who again, we haven't seen her do anything since she won Wimbledon. It's not like she hasn't been playing. She just has been kind of.
We didn't see her do much at Wimbledon either.
Do much at Wimbledon.
Just went out and won it. She didn't really do.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, like, no disrespect to women's tennis in any way, shape, or form, but that can work at a slam level. The pressure is incredibly high, and if you can just kind of keep your head and you just play complementary tennis and let your opponent have the meltdown on the other side of the net, then that's a strategy that will work for her if she deploys that. So I would not have given her even a second look if she hadn't already done it at Wimbledon, I don't think. And I am not a player who ever really goes hard for a first timer coming off of a first time slam. Like, that is usually a recipe for absolute disaster. But the way that Vondrousova won, and just in general, her game and the style and the way that she fits with the U.S. Open conditions, I think she's got a shot here. If you were to have me make blind predictions today, I have Ego over Vondrousova in the final.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I will say Vondrousova, she won the tournament. She completely bottled the semi-final against Svitolina, and if Svitolina was just able to bump the ball back over the net at the end of that second set, Vondrousova goes down because her body was so nervous and she was so tight that she was hitting serves halfway up the net and playing drop shots like every other point because she couldn't physically hit ground strokes. She was seemingly, maybe it was cramping or something, but she broke down. And then somehow she just turned into Stephen Curry in the final against Ons Jabeur, and just did everything that she needed to do there, which admittedly was impressive. Let's close out with the fourth quarter. Ons Jabeur, aforementioned, she's plus 500, second favorite behind Arina Sabalenka at plus 120, who she beat in the semi of Wimbledon. Beat Sabalenka, beat Rybakina, lose to Vondrousova. That old recipe. Kasatkina plus 900, Xinwen Zheng, who I think is going to win a Grand Slam at some point in the next decade. It's probably not going to be this one, but she's 10-1. The price that leapt out to me, though, is Krejcikova at plus 1,400. I mean, it was only a couple of months ago Krejcikova was going off at 14-1 to win tournaments, let alone win quarters. What's wrong with her at the moment?
Yeah, I think she's been carrying fatigue and injury through the last, really since the French Open, I guess. I think we saw the best of her in Australia and then through the winter swing. It's going to take something pretty special for her to get deep into this tournament, in my opinion. I agree with you that Zheng Xingwen will, at some point, hoist a very, very impressive trophy. but I don't think it's this month, and I don't think it's September either, for that matter. But I don't think she can realistically put together a run at this moment. And of all of the favorites to win quarters, this is the one that makes the most sense to me as like a creative parlay piece, something like that. I mean, plus 120 is not going to get that's not going to get you a new house at the beach, but it's certainly a price that I have value in. I think I did a quick run of the numbers, and I have Sabalenka. It like well above 50% to win this quarter with this draw, and yeah, I mean, you mentioned Hans Jabeur, who is last year's finalist, and I hope that she wins something someday. And oh, by the way, not only did she beat Rebecca and Sabalenka, she beat Kvitova too. She beat the second, third, and fourth choices all in a row, bang, 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 and then lost to Vondrousova. So, yeah, it's going to be a surprise to see her make that same sort of run. And realistically, I think you're going to see a price like Sabalenka minus 250 against Jabeur if that's your semifinal, considering the speed and the conditions and what Sabalenka brings in terms of power. Really, the fun bet that I'm going to wait for is stage of elimination and Sabalenka to lose in the semifinals.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Goes down to Vondrousova. I like it. Okay. Before we get into some outright picks and some analysis of that market, a reminder that there's no better way to start your day than watching one of the biggest stars in baseball in America's biggest city, Shohei Ohtani, who will be playing this weekend. Despite tearing his UCL, he will continue to play as a DH. That was reported earlier. Shohei and his Angel teammates, what's left of them, will take on the Mets at Citi Field this Sunday on MLB Leadoff. Catch the action live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. All right, US Open outrights. Men's, we've talked about Djokovic, Alcaraz at length. Djokovic plus 120, Alcaraz plus 175. I know you like Djokovic and prefer him. I mean, there's no value on Alcaraz whatsoever, but is there anything on Djokovic at plus 120? I can't imagine that there is. If you just, I mean, even if you're multiplying minus 1,000, minus 1,500, eventually it adds up. And in the final, he's presumably not going to be minus 1,000. So I would imagine that you're better off just waiting on this one.
So actually, I'm going to challenge some of the math here and say I do think it's a bet now for Djokovic. Okay. And here's the basics, right? Something happens to Alcaraz at some stage. Cam Norrie gets him. Zverev gets him. Sinner gets him. Medvedev gets him. Who knows? Actually, Medvedev's not going to get him. but something happens to him before he gets out of the first quarter. Djokovic's price when we wake up that next morning is going to be like minus 250. Like realistically, Alcaraz is the only player in this tournament who has a realistic shot to take Djokovic out, in my opinion. And for those reasons, if he is eliminated before they get to the final, Djokovic ought to be effectively like, Nadal 2016 French Open type outright price, right? This is accepting and recognizing a hand up that Djokovic, this is his worst slam surface. Conditions, humidity, temperature, when they play the final, all of it is not in his favor. But I think realistically, the chances of him getting to the final are significantly greater than Alcaraz. And then the chances of him being a favorite in that final, I think, are very good as well. Looking at the market and the way that that closed in the Cincinnati final, I would expect something similar, if not more support for Djokovic because it's best of 5. And I would think that you're going to get some kind of a price in the minus 180 range if it is Djokovic Alcaraz in that final. So plus 120 shortens to minus 180, in my opinion, over the course of this fortnight, if it's Alcaraz Djokovic in the final, and plus 120 shortens to minus 500 if he's up against Medvedev or Zverev or the like in the final.
Okay, so for plus 120 to win the title to be good, he has to be on average in terms of winning 7 rounds minus 830 on average price round by round. Obviously, he's going to be shorter than that for the first couple of rounds first few rounds, really. So it's all about really what the Alcaraz price is to make the final and how much equity is there. So certainly, I mean, if you think that Alcaraz is less than a 50% chance to make the final, because like for reference, I mean, what's Djokovic? What would he be against Medvedev in the final? Is he like minus 550?
500.
Yeah.
500-ish probably. I have to go back and refresh what happened in 2 years ago where Medvedev did get the better of him. But if you are using that as a reference point for the current state of these two players or for the situational factors that are going on, then you have done something horribly wrong. Because Medvedev was playing way sharper. He had a much easier path. Djokovic was coming off of an absolute marathon in the semifinals against Zverev, and also was carrying the pressure of trying to win a calendar slam. All of that's gone, and I think Djokovic. I make him in the ballpark of 85% to get out of Q4. I feel like I'm short there. Like I feel like it should be higher because I don't think cumulatively the rest of the players have actually a 15% chance to beat him in a best of 5. But that's what the math tells me. And then 85 to get to the semifinals. He'll be in the minus 800 range against the likes of a Casper Ruud in the semifinals, and then in the minus 500 range, in my opinion, against Medvedev. If it's Zverev, maybe it's a little shorter. Maybe it's only minus 350 or something like that. But I do think that plus 120 is going to look pretty good in a couple weeks.
Okay. Very quickly on the women's outright, talked about if you shop around, you can get Ludmila Samsonova at 70-1, that type of range. I think that is good value given her quarter and just given her upside. Any interest in Iga at plus 260?
Kind of. I think she's going to win. This is tricky. Like, she won last year ugly. I think we can all kind of acknowledge that. It was an ugly championship, but she did it. She outlasted a lot of other women who, were kind of on fumes. She got a somewhat easy path towards the business end of that tournament. And I think a lot of that is setting up for a repeat. I am sincerely concerned about what's going on with her second serve. And on any given day, that could undo her against a player who is bringing their absolute best. But I really think that the way that the draw stacked up, she was one of the big winners, despite Q1 being full of very, very good players. That seems counterintuitive. But there's going to be damage on the other section of her draw, which I think makes her potential punching a ticket to a semifinal a little bit higher. Basically because Coco Gauff got just an absolute gauntlet to get to a quarterfinal against Iga. I think that to me tilts the balance a bit in the Poles' favor.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. She is certainly the rightful favorite. Just can't, after what I saw against Svitolina at Wimbledon and losing to Pegula and Goff in the lead-up tournaments, can't quite get there at that price, but we'll see how it unfolds. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Please don't forget to rate and subscribe if you're listening in podcast form. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.